Hello everyone, and we are here for one of our online sessions today. Hack the League Chapter 2 is just around the corner, and on 8th and 9th of April, most of you are joining us for the hackathon as a participant, as a hacker. And today we are doing our first online session for this Hack the League Chapter 2, and all the other sessions and events would be there offline. So for this session, we have with us our guest Aditya Oberai. Aditya Oberai is one of our previous league heroes from Hack the League Chapter 1, and he is coming with our one of our impactful sponsors, Appwrite. So let us welcome him on the screen. Hey Aditya.
Hi Dheeraj, hi everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay,
Dheeraj, what's
so
up? How are things going for you?
yes, it's fine for me, and how it's for you? After from Hack the League Chapter 1, we have moved to
Good.
Chapter 2.
No, it's really cool to see that you've all gone in person. Unfortunately, due to circumstances, it's gonna not be possible for me to join in person, but I'm glad to be here online with you today.
Yeah, so we do not forget our league heroes. So whether you're coming in person or online, so we are called Aditya Online, and so he is with us here for telling us more about Appwrite and getting started with Appwrite. So yes, Aditya, now you can proceed, and screen is all yours.
Thank you so much. Now, while we're getting to it, I do have some slides I'll be sharing, and we will have a live demo in the middle as well. But while the team brings up the slides, I'd love to know how you're all doing as well. Where are you joining in from? While we just get ready with the slides. Perfect. Thanks a lot for that, Dheeraj. Um, yeah, no, I guess we're good to go with the session now. So today, what we'll be talking about is what AppRate is, why AppRate is a helpful tool, and how you can leverage AppRate for your applications, especially within the hackathon. Uh, Good to know, Vinay. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. So, well, yeah, getting started with AppRate. Just before that, hi once again. I'm Aditya. I'm one of our developer advocates here. Um, and what that basically means is it's my job to make sure that any of you who want to build with AppWrite are able to do so, that you're having a good time with AppWrite, that you're able to access the necessary resources, um, the necessary content, and if you do need, I'm there to help out. So I get to have fun with you all as a part of my job at AppWrite. And yes, if any of you want to reach out to me, you can do so via my Twitter handle, which is there on the screen. You can also find my other social media accounts on my website there. So, yeah, in case you want to reach out to me afterwards as well, feel free to do so from either of those places. Now, as a part of this session on getting started with AppWrite, we'll be discussing a few different things today. The first one is what is AppWrite, of course. Second, we'll see how you can build with AppWrite. So we'll go look and understand what the AppWrite console looks like, what sort of services it has available, and we'll also try out one of the services, building with one of the services right now. Um, Thirdly, I'll show you some resources that you can access if you want to work more with AppWrite, and fourth, how you can stay in touch with the AppWrite community later on as well. I already see Paranjay has been looking at AppWrite and mentions that they're going to use it for authentication, which is awesome to know. That's great. We do have a really extensive authentication service. Do check out some of the other features as well. We've got some really cool stuff going on. But yeah, I'll be talking more about that as we go forward. So I hope it's going to be interesting and insightful for you. So first up, what exactly is AppWrite? Um, AppWrite is what you would call an open source backend server or a backend as a service platform. What this means is AppWrite features and caters the necessary APIs and services that you would need to build a full-fledged application. Um, that could include authentication, databases, serverless functions, storage, and a few more services that I will be telling about and showcasing after this. The reason a tool like Appwrite becomes necessary in the first place is because in the world today, building modern software, it's not easy anymore. Um, the truth is that with the number of stacks, the number of different tools, the kinds of databases, the kinds of storage services, the types of authentication, all of these different things around, developers do need to know quite a lot in order to build out a full-fledged application. Secondly, as a developer, if you're working on different projects, if you're working um, across products, whether individual projects or even within a team, within a company, chances are you're going to come across a lot of repetitive tasks. Like, think about it this way: as a developer, how many applications would you have built where you need authentication, or you need a database, or you need storage services, or you need serverless functions? Um, it's highly repetitive, right? There's a lot of redundant work across. And in truth, as software has grown, as software has progressed, and it's become more and more important to make secure applications. So security within tech has become a far more complex space than it used to be, and it takes a substantial amount of years of experience to fully understand it. As we were talking about redundant tasks, I see Paranj has mentioned that they've copy pasted authentication across projects, but while that's possible in your personal projects, it might not be the same when you're at a company, because either there might be a highly customized solution that you're working with, whether it's a custom role based authentication solution. You might have some services being used like Auth0 or Okta somewhere, but in general, the more complex the solution is, your authentication and authorization solutions accordingly grow and become more complex as well. So it might seem simple enough right now, but at scale it can change. So the whole idea why you would want to use a tool like Appwrite is that it makes software development a lot less painful for you. So when we look at Appwrite, we are catering pretty much all, if most if not all, backend services and tools that you would need to build a full-fledged application on any platform, whether it's for the web, whether it's for mobile, even for desktop. We've got Flutter supported as well at the moment, and we do have support for other um, languages in the works as well, like C Sharp, for example. So you can build with Appwrite for the web, for the mobile, or for Flutter at the moment. And for that matter, the kind of services we offer and include are authentication and user management. We've got our own database service. There is storage buckets. We've got cloud functions, which are basically the way serverless functions would work. We've got webhooks inbuilt. All of this is built keeping in mind and to ensure security practices as well. We do offer some amount of internationalization support uh, through the option to select geolocation. There is an image manipulation API available within as well, which is used in coordination in conjunction with our storage APIs. And we've also got a real-time service around it, which is actually really cool, because what that means is that you can actually get updates across your Appwrite instance in real time. So we've got all of these different tools available for you right now. And along with that, we've also got quite an extensive number of SDKs for platforms such as the web, which includes JavaScript and TypeScript. We've got support for Android. We have Kotlin as well as Java. We've got support for iOS and Apple platforms. So that means for the Mac as well, using Swift. We've got Python, uh, Ruby on Trails, and a few more languages supported there at the moment. So yes, this covers most paradigms, but in case there's a language that isn't covered by our SDKs, we also have GraphQL as well as a REST API that you can use, and all of those are covered within the documentation right now. Um, Considering all of that, this is what the architecture of Appwrite looks like at the moment. Uh, we've got a CLI and our console, which would let you interact with your Appwrite instance in the most convenient manner. And then, of course, we've got SDKs for the web, for mobile, as well as server side applications. The way you would communicate with Appwrite is through either our REST API, our GraphQL API, or our real-time API, which is a WebSocket server. Behind that, we've got all of these different services, the different APIs, which have services running further behind them. So it is a monolith combined with microservices. That's how Appwrite is structured at the moment. And you can actually get into the depth of this if you look at the Appwrite repository as well later on. Considering we've talked a little bit about Appwrite, of course, at a hackathon, more than looking at the architecture, you want to be building on top of it, right? So I thought this would be a great chance for us to, um, try out Appwrite as well. I see Paranja's question there on self-hosting Appwrite. Yes, absolutely. Appwrite was built to self-host first and cloud has come later. So yes, you can absolutely self-host Appwrite. The way you would do that is via a Docker command, which is available on the Appwrite website. For now, however, because this is an MLH hackathon and um, we've got Appwrite Cloud in the works, we have a special offering here where you don't need to necessarily self-host Appwrite and you can directly register to access the private beta for Appwrite Cloud right now. So if you want to do that, the link for that is up here on the screen, and I believe Dheeraj will share that in the chat with all the hackers as well. But yes, if you sign up here, this will give you access for the next few months to um, Appwrite Cloud for absolutely free, no cost. As soon as you hop onto the link, you should find the special code entered already. So all you need to do is register there. But in case you end up removing the code is just MLH all small. But yeah, you can go ahead and register there. And once you do that, I'm actually going to switch my screen now after this so that I can show you the console. So for that, I'll tell you what, let me shift StreamYard here to my right on my other screen so that I'll be looking on my main working screen now. And I will just bring it up in a minute. All right, so I think, Dheeraj, what we can do is we can switch my screens over now. All right. I believe my main screen should be visible. So yes, once my screen is visible, what I will do is I'll go back to the same link that we have, hackp.ac/appwrite. Now the thing is, I am already signed up to Appwrite Cloud, so when I hop over, it will show an authenticated a login page already. Now, when you log into Appwrite, the first thing you will see is you will be asked to create an organization or project, and you will see a screen of the sort here. Let me zoom in a little bit here. I think this should make it easier to see. You will also be able to see members, and what that basically means is if you've got a team, you can add other members to your organization as well. You will find a settings page. Do not delete the organization, please, after you've created it. That's one recommendation. Otherwise, you will lose all the data within this project once you're actually running. For the demo, I will actually create a separate project as well, and we will call it HTL demo. Or wait, we'll just skip the full name. Hack the leak. I'll change the project ID to have HTL demo. The cool thing here is that we now allow customization of the project ID as well. If you don't want to keep that, however, it will be randomly generated for you. And this can be quite handy later on. When you set it up initially, what you will see is that it'll ask you to add a platform. What that means is if you're building out a web application or a Flutter or an Apple or an Android application for the client side, this will let you register your application. And the reason we do so is to ensure that we're protecting your applications against a CORS error. And what CORS basically means is, its full form is cross origin resource sharing. But what this prevents is that um, it prevents unauthorized domains from accessing your information here. By the way, if you can actually have a wildcard here as well, but I do not recommend doing that. Um, so when you're working on your web applications, make sure to register your application here after it's done. Similarly, if you're working on the server side, you can take an API key out of this and define the scopes for that as well. So that's how you'll see the front page. And once you've started using it, you will start seeing analytics and insights into your application. So that'll include requests, real-time connections, your usage, how many documents you might have in your database, storage, and so on. So it'll give you more and more insights about your project as well here. I'll keep an eye out on the chat here as well, by the way. So if you see me turning right, that means I'm just looking at the chat right now. A good resource to build with it would be the Appwrite documentation. That's the way to go. I'll show all of that as we go forward, by the way. Next up, before we jump into the services, I'm just going to show you the settings here. So the settings include your project ID and endpoint. We will be needing these as we build later on as well, because the service that I'll be showing how to build with is a function, one of the cloud functions on Appwrite. So we will need our endpoint and so on later on. In order to update the name, this is just your project name. If you want to update it, you can do so. Then we've got the services. Now, when you're building with Appwrite, you'll be using some of these services across your instance. Any service that you do not need to use, you can shut off here as well, which does have benefits from a security perspective. So if you want to do that, that's optional, and you can do so. We've got the ability to have add custom domains. So if you own a domain that you want to connect to your instance, you can do so. I have actually done that for my self-hosted instance on a DigitalOcean droplet as well. So it's quite handy if you want to do that later on. And then we've got webhooks as well. By the way, all of these services have the documentation links connected. So if you just click on that, you will find the documentation for each of these services here as well. Moving towards the services, the first one that I want to show here is authentication. Our authentication service has quite a few different offerings. So it lets you add users via a few different methods, such as email or password authentication, which is your conventional authentication method. Secondly is phone authentication. So if you want to use your phone number to log in via OTPs or so on, that is something we offer as well. We've got magic URL. And what magic URL does is, if you've got an email ID and you do not want to use password authentication, it will send you an email with a URL that lets you log in. So if you've used Slack, you might have come across this. Anonymous login just lets you have an anonymous user on there. And then if you want them to sign up, you can do so. JWT authentication is again very handy. So JWT stands for JSON Web Tokens, and these are actually used to keep information about your user account and so on. So if you've got an account where you've signed in from the client side, and then you want to authenticate your server-side APIs and use this accordingly, that's where JWT tokens are typically used. So if you've got a full stack application and you want to use your JWT there, if you want to use if you want to connect your backend with Appwrite, for example, you could log in with the server side and send the JWT back. This is helpful, especially when you need user information, right? Because the API key will let you access all the different services, but when you want only services for a specific user, so the way you would do that is you would authenticate with a JWT and send that back. For now, the OAuths to providers here are, need to be set up. So the way you would do that is, if it's Auth0, for example, and you want to implement, Auth0's authentication within your application, you would just go ahead and grab the client ID and client secret from, their website. And we've got some docs for that. So, we've got the Auth0 developers platform linked here. So you can go there, grab your client ID, client secret, and Auth0 domain, and that should help you set it up. So you can set up any of the specified auth providers here as well. Next up, and by the way, just one more thing. We've also got support for teams within the authentication service. What this means is if you want to create groups of different kinds of users, and this would work very similarly to how roles work. If you want to create groups of specific users and allocate specific services or access to certain, collections within the database, or access to very specific functions. Um, Teams are a very handy feature because they let you allocate access of, they basically implement uh, an offering similar to how role based authentication works. So when you want to implement access control for specific groups only, like if it's a classroom application, right, and you want to have separate offerings for teachers and separate for students, something like the Teams feature is what you would use there. Second thing, we've got databases. Now, databases work. Now, what we have here is we've got a wrapper, an abstracted version of a database which runs MariaDB under the hood. However, the reason this has been done so is because eventually going forward, we will be adding support for different database adapters as well. So if, for example, I go ahead, I can create a database here. I'm going to call it test, and we go ahead and create it, right? What this is going to do is it's going to create a database here for me within which I can add multiple collections, which are like tables. Let's call this cities, just randomly thinking of it at the moment. And then within that, we've got documents. Now, some of this terminology seems similar to how a NoSQL database has their terminology, but for some of you who've only worked with relational databases, documents work the same way as rows in a table, and the collection is the equivalent of a table. What attributes are would be, you know, the kind of fields you would input into your database table. So if you want to add city name, you would set this as the key as city. You would have the attribute type. There could be a default value if you want, and then you create. You can also have indexes, which are quite handy when you're querying. By the way, some more documentation for that. We've got the settings for each of these. You can add permissions, which is where the teams would come in handy, by the way. And by the way, you can have collection level permissions, which you would add here, or permissions specific to each documentation. So if you want even more granular permissions, you have the option to do that. And yeah, that's a bit about the databases. In the future, by the way, you will be able to connect external databases here as well. That is something we're working forward to implement. Going further to functions, functions would work the same way as cloud or serverless functions. Um, we're actually going to be working on this later on, is just after I've shown storage. So I'm going to hop to this just after. Now the storage service works in a way where you can add a storage bucket here. If any of you have worked with S3 in the past, that's a kind of storage solution that we have. And we do actually support external storage adapters already in the self-hosted version at least. So when you're working with a self-hosted, and if you want to connect S3 or Linode or Backblaze or DigitalOcean storage, you can do so. So the way you would use storage is we would have a single bucket in which you can add files. And the file size for now, for cloud at least, the maximum size is 3 GB. But if, for example, I choose, okay, let's add this picture here. I can go ahead, I can set a file ID for it. I'm gonna change it to dolly to image. You can add permissions for it, which is something you can do, and I would create. So this uploads the file for me, and then later on I can delete it, I can access it, I can get a URL for it as well. So if, for example, I want to consume it outside, I can do that. Now, coming to functions, we're actually going to be building a cloud function today. So for that, I'm going to take us to the documentation first, because we're going to be doing a couple of things here. All right. Now, the function service we have works just like any other serverless functions system, right? The easiest way to get started with that is the Appwrite CLI, which is a command line application that we have that lets you interact with your Appwrite server. So we're actually going to go ahead and live demo and set this up. I'm going to keep sending these links to Dheeraj, by the way, so he can share these with you folks later on, through the chat. But if you hop over to the Appwrite documentation, an easy way to do that would be just visiting the Appwrite website. We've got docs here. We're going to go to the CLI. All right. So there are a few ways to install the CLI. One is to install it through npm if you would like, which is convenient. But if you don't have Node installed on your system, you can still very much do that for your systems. So for macOS, you can do so with our curl script or homebrew. For Linux, you would be using the curl script definitely. For Windows, we've got a PowerShell script. If you run that, it should instantly install the CLI for your system. Now, for me, I already have this installed at the moment. So the way to check that is once you run the install, just appwrite-v, and it will show you, if as long as it gives a version number, it means your uh, CLI is installed and ready to go. Now I have it installed, so I haven't redone it, but it's as simple as a single command. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead to my desktop and create a new directory called HTL demo. I'm going to enter this directory here, and that is where we will be adding our serverless function. And let me just. So now, as you know, we've got our Appwrite instance installed and ready. The Appwrite CLI installed and ready. The first thing we want to do is log into the CLI to make sure we can actually use this. The credentials you would use here are the same ones that you signed up on Appwrite Cloud or your Appwrite instance with. I'm going to go ahead and log in here with my credentials. And the last thing you need here is the endpoint, which, by the way, when we were looking at Appwrite, when we went to the settings, we saw the endpoint there, right? We're going to need this here for us because this is only going to be able to log into your instance, by the way, right? So as soon as it logs in, you will see a success message there. If it doesn't, it'll give you a failure message and take you back. Once that is done, in the directory you would want to be working in, we're going to go ahead and run the command appwrite init project. This is important because the first thing we want to do is link this to a specific project on your Appwrite instance. Now, in our case, we have a directory, we have a project created, so we're going to link this directory to that project for now. And as soon as I do that, because we're logged into my instance, it will show which projects I have set up. So I'm going to select the Hack the Leak demo instance here. Now, the next thing that I want to create is a serverless function, right? That's the one we wanted to work on. So I don't actually need to go ahead and create the function from here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to run the command appwrite init function. We're going to call this function random word because I'm going to create a function that can return a random word from a random word API. Okay. Now the ID for this can be, it could be unique, or we'll actually just keep it random word as well, because why not? Now you can see that we've got 5 runtimes, and the way the CLI gets these runtimes is by looking at, because it's connected with your instance, it'll show which runtimes are available. On the cloud beta for now, we've got 5 runtimes available that are Node.js, PHP, Ruby, Python, and Dart. However, if you're working on a personal self-hosted instance, we have more runtimes that you can work with, like C++, .NET, Swift, Kotlin, Java, Ruby, all and a few more. And as Appwrite Cloud grows, we will go ahead and add more runtimes here as well. For now, though, I will select Node.js. So the moment I do that, if I just list out within this directory, it create. Oh, I forget I'm on Windows. Sorry. As I go ahead, I see that it's created a file appwrite.json as well as a folder functions. Now I'm gonna go ahead and open this in VS Code now. So when we look at the appwrite.json, this is actually a configuration for our project. It contains details about the project ID, the project name, functions, the details about your specific functions, including the ID of the function, the name of the function, what runtime we've selected, the path of where this function is kept, because when we go and deploy, we'll go back to the same HTML demo and we'll just be deploying it. So this configuration checks the path of your function relative to it. It's got the entry point as well, which is basically where the function will be triggered from, files that we need to ignore, as well as if we have any events or schedule is basically a cron schedule, and so on. So we're going to go into the functions folder now. It has another directory, random word, which includes the source code for our function. Now we're going to hop into this here. A few things to note here is that firstly, we've already got a little function example set up. This is made possible because we have templates available for you, right? And it's going to have, it's going to showcase a few of the Appwrite services. For now, however, we're not going to be working with this at the moment. We'll be changing it a little bit to work with the random word API that we want. All right. It's also got a package.json. So the moment you want to include any packages or dependencies, this is the place where you would keep those. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to remove this dependency. All right. Because what we're going to be doing is we'll create a function that can get a random word, right? So what we will be creating that using is the random word API that is available. And I see it's already given and shown a word here. I'm just going to go ahead and show the website. This is a free API, by the way. And if you search on Google, you should probably come across this regardless. But I'm going to share a link for this as well. So it'll make life a little easier for you. So the way you work with this API is you just hit, the word endpoint on this, and it's available on the website. You can find it there, as well as their other endpoints, and it's going to return one random word back to us. Okay. Now, the way we get and we hit APIs within Node is by using, you can do so using a couple of different libraries like Fetch or Axios or so on. For now, what I'm going to be doing is I will be using the Fetch library to do that. So I am going to go ahead and I am going to actually first enter the directory for the random word, and I will be installing a library called node-fetch, which lets us you know use the fetch library. So I'm going to go ahead and install that, and I'm going to install specifically version 2 of it for now. So as soon as this sets up, what I will see is that my package.json, it should ideally have some, yeah, wait, what? Okay, 1 second. Yeah, we need to, I messed up, my bad, 1 second. It should ideally, yeah, it'll add the dependency there for me, right? It has the node fetch dependency mentioned. The reason it didn't edit is because I was working on the file at the same time, which is not a good idea. But yeah, what we will do is I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of this code that we don't need for now. All right. And keep this rather lean. So, and we're also going to remove this. We're going to change it to fetch, to require node fetch. And basically what that means is we're just, you know, the fetch constant will let us use the node fetch library here within this function. One comment here that you should look at is the one that exists. And this basically tells us what the request, the rec, and the res variables are. This is going to be quite handy as you work with cloud functions on Appwrite, because the rec variable, it will, when you spin up and when you run and trigger an Appwrite function, it will contain the headers, the payload, and the variables that the function variables that we have. And the rest variable is what we use to send back a response. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a word now. Okay, we're going to go use the fetch. And by the way, this should be awaited. We will use the fetch library here to give this a little function call, after which we will convert the response into a JSON, after which, because what it's sending back is an array, I will be getting a little word out of it. And what we will do is we will send this response back. So I'm going to change this up to is HDL awesome? Absolutely yes. And we will set random word. And this will take the word variable that we've just kept up there. So, once this function is ready, and later on you can remove this comment if you want. But because this function is now ready, I'm just going to quickly go back to my terminal. We're going to clear it up, and then I will use a command, appwrite deploy function. What this shows me now is the functions I have available. By the way, if you have more than one, you can either select an individual, or you can use the A command to just select all. Once this is selected, I will enter. It will go ahead and deploy the function now. So now when I go back to my Appwrite instance, and we've got this page here, right? I will quickly just reload it. And it will show that we've got a function now. So as I enter that, you will see that it's got a deployment, which is where the function is deployed. By the way, if you've got multiple deployments, it will also show past inactive deployments here. I can check the build logs for this, which will show me that the function has been built. Afterwards, once this function is ready, you can either trigger it using one of the SDKs, or you can directly execute it from the console as well. So if I go ahead and execute it now, we didn't have an in there, but if you had an input, that's what would go into the payload. We will see that the function executes here. And it shows the log that we've got the response. By the way, in case you have any errors later, it'll also show those here. So it'll show us our response as a JSON here, which is quite handy. Now, as you saw that this first, the first time we triggered the function, it took 1 second. The next time I trigger it, it's not going to take so much. It just took 120 milliseconds. And the reason why this happens is because we've got something called, in the serverless world, called cold starts, where this is where the first run of the function, as it is used to spin up your function container in this case, or a VM or so on, it takes a little bit of time to get that running as well. But once the container is running, every subsequent trigger is going to be quicker, or on an average around the same time. By the way, we've got some settings here, including details about the function as well, like the function name and the ID. When it was created on, you can set permissions here as well, set events. So what that means is, if suppose I want to trigger this function based on an event that occurs across my Appwrite instance, like a field was added into the database, I can actually set these events to trigger it. So if I don't want to trigger it manually, but through one of these events, that is possible. Similarly, we can set cron schedules, which let you run your function on certain periodic times. So if I want to set it for every minute, or every day, or every year, or for specific days in the week, that is very much possible. The variables here would work similar to how environment variables are used. You can add variables here in the field as well. So if, for example, I had a different sort of a function where I wanted secret keys, right, I would be able to add those here. And then here, if we've got the function timeout, which basically limits the execution time. So if you have very long running, or you want your function to be running for a shorter period of time only, this is how you would set that. Or and this, by the way, it's good to keep these to not very high periods of time. So this also lets you know if your function actually isn't just working and is stuck. So yeah, that was a little demo of what you can do with Appwrite. We got a little function up and running there, right, that you can try out. By the way, it does show an example JSON, but that's kind of a static field, so we can let that be. But yeah, it's just an example of how you would add data here if you want. Just gonna execute it once again for good luck. But yeah, it's all working, it's all functioning. We can see that here. So that's a bit about Appwrite. Now, Dheeraj, if we can go back to the slides, that would be great. Thank you so much for that. Now, going forward, there are a few resources you can check out and try. As you learn about Appwrite. Paranjay, I saw you on. Yeah, that's a good point. Fetch is now inbuilt. However, I was using Node 16. I'm not sure if it's in Node 16, but rather just in Node 18 and beyond. So if you're in a, because we've got a few different runtimes for Node as well. With 16, I believe you still need to add it, but that could be wrong. Um, the way you would add a body is you would add the custom field, and that would come in the rec.payload field. So if you go to the functions documentation, you can see an example of that. Okay, if you want to see how to create multiple functions, you would just go back to the CLI, Appwrite init function once again, and it'll just keep adding functions to the functions folder. But yeah, so here are some resources you can look at. First one being the Appwrite documentation. That's the best place to look and learn about Appwrite. We've got different guides, our reference for all the SDKs and APIs. So please look at their, at whenever you can, because that is the one-stop place for accurate information on how to work with Appwrite. Secondly, we've got the Appwrite repository in case you find any issues or you want to understand how Appwrite works under the hood or you want to self-host. That is the place to look at. Thirdly, we've got the awesome Appwrite repository, which is actually a collection of projects that have been built with Appwrite. It also features some other blogs and resources by members in the community. So if you work and create a full-fledged project with Appwrite, you can go ahead and contribute it there as well. And staying in touch with us. The best way to do that is by joining our Discord community. We've got a very active community on Discord where we have people from all around the world as well as the Appwrite core team. So if you want to chat with them, collaborate with them, ask any doubts about Appwrite, we've also got a support channel. We also do some regular, events within our Discord server. Like we have our weekly office hours and other AMAs from time to time. So do go ahead and join the Discord server. It's a great place to connect with other people in the Appwrite community. And yeah, otherwise, our GitHub is a great place to do that as well. It's got all our contributors, and we've also got active GitHub discussions going on. So you can always go ahead there. And if you do so, please go ahead and give us a star as well. We definitely appreciate that a lot. We also have a very active Twitter handle. So if you want to interact with us, Twitter is another great place to do that. So yeah, that was about it from me for the presentation. Thank you so much for looking at the demo, and I will continue taking doubts for a little more time here after now. So yeah, feel free to throw them in the chat. Paranja, I'll tell you what, why don't I bring my screen back up once again? So I'll show you how to create um, a new server, like, an extra function. I'll just show that once. Dheeraj, if you can switch to the screen, that's great. So we're back in the terminal, right? Within this folder, if I go ahead and I add Appwrite init function, I'm just going to leave it as my awesome function, unique, and I will select Dart here. So the moment I do that, if we go back to code, you will find that functions now has two different folders, where we've got our Dart function as well that is available. All right. And however, it's not immediately going to be available on your Appwrite instance because I haven't deployed it yet. Once I do that, oh, actually, wait, it did initialize it. So, yeah, initializing is going to create this on your Appwrite instance. However, after editing it, you need to deploy it to make sure your deployment is present there as well. My bad on that. But yeah, once you initialize it, you'll find it up here. And as we said, for the body, we've got a payload variable within it. So rec.payload is going to give you the request body data. It does come through as a string, so you will have to deserialize. Yeah, you'll have to deserialize it once. Do we have any other questions? Even if not, the Appwrite community is a great place to ping us whenever you need to. I am also part of the Hack the League Discord server, so you can find me there as well. And aside from that, I did share my Twitter earlier, so we can throw that in the chat once again if we need to. Let me share the link to that. I would prefer though, for Appwrite doubts, if we keep those within, on the HTL Discord or our Discord, that would be handier because there's a lot of other people who can help out as well. At least with our Discord server, we've got dedicated support channels. So if you raise questions there, you'll definitely get a response the quickest. Um, so if you want to check that out, let me share the link for that here. Hi Rohan. Yeah, I know. I do wish you all the very best with that. It's just with circumstances, it's not going to be possible for me to join this time, but definitely keep an eye out, and I'm hoping that it goes successful.
So I think there are no more questions.
No worries, no worries. Even then, people there's ways to reach out, so people can definitely do that. But yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Yes, thank you so much, Aditya. It was a wonderful session, and those who are getting started with Appwrite and want to use Appwrite in their hackathon or in their projects in the hackathon, they would be grateful for it. Also, Aditya, this time you are not coming, but for next time, HTL Chapter 3, we will make sure we are here in person. Uh,
We'll definitely figure it out.
okay. Uh, so the session is live on YouTube, but it will be available recorded. Like if you want to check it next time, I want to revise whatever Aditya told you. Also, all the links will be there in the description. After that, I will update, and the link is already pinned in the chat. The link from where you can sign up for Appwrite Cloud. This one. So yes, that's all. And we also will also have volunteers and all in the in-person hackathon. Who can assist you for Appwrite or anything else for the hackathon. So thank you, Aditya, and thank you, Appwrite, for
Thank you so much.
joining us and being a sponsor for Hack the League. So I think there are no more questions, and we can end this session. Also, uh, meet you on 8th of April. So those who are joining us in person, I will be there. And
Yeah.
Aditya, you can follow him on Twitter, tag him for Appwrite as well as for the sessions, and you can take a screenshot of this screen, and that's all. Okay, so
Right.
thank you everyone. Bye bye.